Hello, everyone. I'm back. It's Gordon Causey, as always, coming to you. I guess today is Thursday, the 25th of July. It is now 10:31 p.m. and I just finished doing my fourth or fifth video ever in the French language, which I spoke daily between the years 2011 and 2015 when I was posted to Valcartier, which is the military base just north of Quebec City. And um, I like to keep my French going. I also think it might be a way to grow the channel. Quebec is a province of 8 or 9 million people. Evening, Daniel Copeman and whale oil beef, namaste. I don't exactly know what that means, but I know that it's a Hindu greeting. Bonsoir. I don't know if did you watch me in French? I thought I was a little disjointed, a little all over the place. My French, I'm not practiced enough at it. I'm good enough to get by. I can go to Montreal or go to Quebec City, go wherever I want, and have no problem getting along. But it's difficult to exchange ideas of political nature. It's not something I'm habituated to, but it was fun to try. And maybe some people will watch it in Quebec, and it might garner some interest. Who knows? Nothing ventured, nothing gained. But at any rate, what I wanted to talk about tonight was a couple things. One was Biden's speech that he gave, and I'm going to play a little bit of it, just the first couple minutes. It's only a 10-minute speech. I don't think he has the cognitive ability to stay on track for longer than that. And he's obviously reading off a teleprompter. This is not a speech that he wrote. I probably won't get to the part, but there's one part in there where I'm certain he meant to say cherished, but he said instead cherry, our cherry nation. And I think he meant to say cherished nation, and he used the word cherished later on. Whoever wrote his speech had the word in there a couple times. Just going to catch up. Whale Oil Beef says, French is very important. I watched the whole French stream, but my knowledge is extremely limited. And my French, a Quebecer can tell that I'm an Anglophone, but it takes them, usually I have to say a complete sentence. As long as I keep things short, they think I'm a Quebecer. And when I was living there, there were times when I passed, people thought that I was from some part of Quebec. A lot of people thought I was from a Montrealais, a Montrealer, because Montrealers tend to use a lot of Anglicisms, and other people thought I was from New Brunswick. But anyway, hello, Hank Holiday. Good to see you. So I wanted to play Daniel Copeman, with respect to Biden, says he's surprised he could make it to 10 minutes, that he could last that long. You and a lot of people, I know Daniel's from Montreal. Je le sais. It's pas français. You got to speak French in Montreal. You got to speak French in Quebec. But so if you want to watch my previous video, give me a critique on how good or bad you thought my French was. I mean, I'm a pure Anglophone, pure laine. Quebecers have this expression where they say, I'm Québécois, meaning I'm a Quebecer pure wool, or Québécois de souche, from the source. And they can trace their ancestry back to the time when Quebec was La Nouvelle France, when it was New France. Anyway, so I just for fun, I call myself Anglophone pure laine because I'm English, Irish, Scottish, Welsh, maybe a little bit of French thrown in because I have a great-grandfather whose last name was La Rochelle, and but he was from England. And maybe a little tiny bit of native because my dad's father was from Manitoulin Island, and the family history went back there several generations. And Manitoulin Island is unceded Ojibwe territory, and just about the entire population going back at that time, at the turn of the last century, 1900 and into the early 1800s, it would be 98% native Ojibwe. Just going to catch up. Whale Oil Beef writes that you can find the Biden mask wearing talking face media snippets. So makes one wonder if he's been dead for many years. I've heard that theory myself. There's so many theories out there, and there's so many people who are all in. Oh, Biden's been dead, and then they'll assert it as fact. Biden's been dead for years. Well, if they're going to install an actor wearing a mask and all this, they'd get someone coherent who can keep his wheels on the tracks and not crash and not derail, as Biden so often does. And someone who could walk up a flight of stairs to get on a plane without falling down 3 and 4 times or doing face plants on stages. Daniel Coleman writes that he's a franglophone. He interchanges, I can parlay English and Francais at the même time. Anyway, enough about the French stuff. I'm going to play for you this video. There's one snippet I want you to hear near the beginning. So let me just bring up my share. I'm getting this from Global News on their channel. Let's make sure it's sharing. Yeah, it's there. And you're seeing my, let me get rid of that. And let me hit play.
Fellow Americans, I'm speaking to you tonight from behind the Resolute desk in the Oval Office. In this sacred space, I'm surrounded by portraits of extraordinary American presidents. Thomas Jefferson wrote the immortal words that guide this nation. George Washington, who showed us presidents are not kings. Abraham Lincoln, who implored us to reject malice. Franklin Roosevelt, who inspired us to reject fear. I revere this office, but I love my country more. It's been the honor of my life to serve as your president. But in the defense of democracy, which is at stake, I think it's more important than any title. I draw strength and I find joy in working for the American people. But this sacred task of perfecting our union.
And that's what what I wanted to draw to, this sacred task of perfecting our union. And that's you talk about a lack of mental acuity. Biden, what he is saying, the words that were put into his mouth, he's espousing a belief that the United States will one day attain perfection with his leadership and Kamala. I found out how to say it now. Kamala Harris. With their leadership, the United States can attain perfection. Screw MAGA. Instead of make America great again, Biden and Harris are now saying, we're going to make America perfect. You talk about delusional. And this is the difficulty that we're in. Yes, the United States, Canada, every country faces severe challenges and everything. But when you go after and you pursue the perfect, then you start throwing away the good. One of the goods is meritocracy, where people attain levels of responsibility and power and influence because they earned it. Now we have this dogma of equality of outcome. We're not interested in equality of opportunity. What we're interested in is equality of outcome. And as I mentioned in the video I did yesterday, I think, it's one thing to have that as a goal. Ideally, yes, diversity is good. Inclusiveness is good. Equity is good. But if you try and force it, you're going to make things exponentially worse. I'll go a little further into this video. And let me get back to and play.
It's not about me. It's about you, your families, your futures. It's about we, the people. We can never forget that. And I never have.
Oh, I'm going to end it here because I don't want to put up with an ad. So let me end this share. Yeah. So, Daniel writes, who writes this shite? I heard an interesting conspiracy theory from none other than a comedian, a very popular comedian that I only became aware of within the last year or so, when he was doing a show just after COVID, just after the truckers had finally opened everything up in this country, and he was able to come to Toronto and do a show. His name's Andrew Schultz. Many will probably know him. He's a bit of a hip. I'm going to call him a hipster. He's young. He's probably in and around 30, and very young, very hip, and the video that introduced me to him was he was doing a show in Toronto at a big sold out venue. And he said, "Does anyone like this guy, Trudeau?" And boo, it just rained down from the crowd. No, no one likes this guy. Oh, those truckers. And he pumped up the truckers. He goes, "This show wouldn't have happened without the truckers. You guys need to get behind those truckers because they get crap done. They get things done, those truckers. You should get them on Fixing Eglinton." Every comedian does that. They pull in a local reference. "Oh, Eglinton, yeah, that's my street. I live there. I drive on it." But he really trashed Trudeau, and his crowd is very diverse. It's, you look out into the crowd and you see Sikh, you see Indian, you see Chinese, you see Black, you see white, you see the mosaic. And Toronto is very much a cosmopolitan city. And anyway, at the end of that show, he said, "Next year, let's do this where the Raptors play." And the following year, he went to, I think it's called Scotiabank Place now, originally was called the Air Canada Centre, where the Leafs and the Raptors play. And he filled it for 2 nights. This is how hot this guy is. And he has his own podcast, like everyone, including this guy, this nobody. His podcast has millions of followers. He's not worried about getting to 1,000. He's got millions, which, if you want to hit that, slam that subscribe button, like everyone says. Hit it if you want. I do appreciate it. But anyway, Daniel Copeman knows him. He's saying Andrew is the SHIT. And his theory is that the Democratic Party, the DNC, the executives, the operatives, the senior, the guys behind the scenes who manage everything, that it was their intention that they want to install Kamala Harris, that they want her as the Democratic nominee. But they knew that she couldn't run and win it. She couldn't go through the primary process and win it. They have their little puppet and they want her in there, but they couldn't even get the Democratic Party to vote for her. They knew that. She's annoying. Her turns of phrase, she thinks she's sounding so intelligent and so smart, and she should go back to being arm candy for Montel Williams. The best line I've heard about Kamala Harris is that this is the first time she's ever advanced her career by having a man pull out. Great line, given her history. And I'm not going to go into her history, but that should give you an indication as to what the history is. She was at some awards presentation with her, some awards banquet, something like, I don't know what it was, Montel Williams, who I think had a talk show for a time, and he had Kamala on one arm and some other broad on the other arm, and I'm using that term intentionally, and because that's what she is. She's just a broad. And I don't care where she got her legal degree from. I have serious doubts as to how she was able to obtain all her academic credentials and her professional credentials. We've all heard of the casting couch. Well, it exists in other spheres as well. Daniel Copeman's writing that Kamala went to McGill. I knew that she spent some teenage years, it's come out in Canada's press, that she spent some time as a teenager growing up in Montreal. I wasn't aware that she had gone to McGill. But anyway, let me get back to Andrew Schultz's conspiracy theory that they wanted to install her, but Kamala had run either in 2016 or 2020. I'm guessing it was 2020. In 2020, who you had this Buttigieg guy, and you had Biden running, and you had a few, and they all dropped out. Well, Kamala was one of the ones who was running, but she earned exactly 0 delegates. She could not attract any voters. She could not attract any support whatsoever. And so if they had forced Biden out early in the race, then it would have been an open primary. And maybe RFK Jr. would have been on the ballot. And goodness knows there might be, Whitmer of Michigan. There might have been Gavin Newsom, who I think those two individuals are disasters, but they perform better. They're better speakers. They don't have that awkward, stupid laugh that Kamala has, and that empty-headed arrogance that she has. And so they knew that wouldn't fly. She is their candidate. This is Andrew Schultz's take on things. I'm going to call it a conspiracy theory. It's what it is. So they conspired to install her as the nominee. And so what they did is they rigged the nomination process. They canceled the primaries, the caucuses in New Hampshire and Idaho and Iowa, and they forced RFK out of the party and did everything they could to ensure that it was Biden only, and hid from the American people. They kept talking him up. Americans could see that he was, the lights are on, but no one's home. They could see that, but no, he has a grueling schedule. It's because he's tired. He's sharp as a tack. He's this, he's that. Bull roar. His best before date was 10 years ago. But they propped him up so that he would win the nomination, and then they could pull the rug out from under him and then steal democracy from registered Republican, or rather from registered Democrat voters. Because the way the American primary system works, most states, as I understand it, if you want to vote in the Democratic primary, you have to be a member, a registered Democrat. There are some states that are called open states where you don't have to be a registered Democrat to vote in the Democratic primary, but most you do. And that's the process. That's the democratic process as exists in the United States for the Republican Party and for the Democrat Party to put forth their candidate for president of the United States. And they circumvented that by gerrymandering things so that Biden would win, so they could pull the rug out from under him. And now he's nominated, or he's backing Kamala Harris without a vote, totally ignoring the democratic process. And it's ironic, if you watch that whole video, it's only 10 minutes long. He keeps talking about, saving democracy from a party that just took away the democratic right of its own party members to put forth the nominee they want. Instead, it's the nominee that the party executives, that the big money donors want. And they want Kamala Harris because she knows they will carry the ball. Let me catch up. Anna Monarchy writes, this rendition makes more sense. Sounds civilized now. Butler, bring me more tea and crumpets. Yeah, they're just operating behind the scenes, manipulating things. And now they're going to get what they want. I've taken it a step further. I did a video on this just yesterday talking about the fact that I believe Biden the rug will be completely pulled out from him. In that speech that he just gave last night, he was saying that he was withdrawing from running for re-election, but that he would continue to operate as president of the United States and would fulfill his duties until the end of his term. The end of the term comes in February. What I'm contending is that probably sometime around mid-October, that he's going to be gone out of the presidency. And what was the name of the president who was elected in 1900? I think it was Harding. And he got horribly sick and died, and his vice president took over. We know, Abraham Lincoln was shot. His vice president took over. I can't remember. McKinley it was shot. His vice president took over. When Franklin Delano Roosevelt died in office, something will happen in mid-October. I don't know what. Not making a prediction as to what, but I'm pretty much making a prediction that what you're going to see happen is Biden is going to leave, is either going to be gone or whatever. And then mid-October, in and around that time frame, and that's key. It has to be, they can't do it too late, and they can't do it too soon. They can't do it right away. They can't do it right now. They got to keep the charade up for a while, that Biden is still cognitively capable of fulfilling the function of president of the United States. They got to continue this charade for another couple months. But then we get for the remainder of August, September, and into October. So between 2 and 3 months, they've got to keep this charade up. Then pull the rug out from under them, however it's done. And then Kamala Harris is inaugurated. I had to think about it more. She wouldn't be inaugurated on the steps of the Capitol with the mall in behind. It wouldn't happen that way. That's not the way it happened. I don't think it happened that way with Jerry Ford. It certainly didn't happen that way with Lyndon Johnson. I think he was inaugurated by a justice of the Supreme Court on Air Force One or on a presidential airplane. With Jackie Kennedy wearing her bloody dress. And she was asked to change her dress, and she said, no, I want them to see what they did. She knew. She knew how many shots were flying out that day and from all directions. And that assassination attempt on Donald Trump on July 13th, that was not just one gunman. That was not just Thomas Matthew Crooks. There were bullets flying all over the place. Where's the ballistics report? Show me the slugs, and then match it up to the rifle that kid was holding. I bet you there minimum 2. I would suspect 4. I would suspect 3 or 4 guns were firing in that day. And Thomas Matthew Crooks was the fall guy. And Donald Trump was supposed to go down. But the next president of the United States, by hook or by crook, is going to be Kamala Harris, because Joe Biden is going to be leaving the White House. He'll be resigning the presidency, or he could be in such ill health that he is taken into hospital and incapacitated, or he could die in some fashion. She will be installed by the middle of October. And then what happens is that the media, our lying mainstream media outlets, the NBC, CBS's, etc., CNNs of the world, can go propaganda on steroids and pummel it into the subconscious minds of the idiot American populace and say, this is the greatest thing. America, after almost 250 years, has finally elected its first female president, and it's a woman of color to boot. We've joined Germany and Pakistan and India and Great Britain and countless other countries. We're now, isn't this wonderful? And it would be propaganda on steroids to pump Kamala Harris up. And with very little time or no time at all for the Trump campaign and the GOP to mount a counteroffensive. And then you go to the polls, November 5th. And against that backdrop, I could even see them doing what it's called push polling. And what they could do is they could call people up and say, how proud are you that America has finally elected its first female president? Are you very proud, somewhat proud, or not proud? And probably 70, 80% would say they're either very proud proud or somewhat proud or a little proud. And then they could combine those three together and say 78% of Americans are proud that Kamala Harris has become the first female president of the United States. And great press coverage. And Trump is a media master. But when it comes to propaganda, shock and awe, blitzkrieg, overwhelm the senses. They did it to us during COVID. The deadly coronavirus. You don't want to get this thing. Oh my, stay in your house, scared. And they took away people's capacity to think. They can do the same thing with, painting Kamala Harris as the greatest president who ever lived. This is my prediction about what's coming in the months ahead. She is going to be installed. That's the Constitution. There's the 25th Amendment. I wasn't fully aware of it until just recently, that if the president is alive but is incapacitated for any number of reasons or is incapable of fulfilling his functions as president and commander in chief, then the vice president, along with the cabinet, they can more or less have him removed. I say him because the United States has always had men as presidents. It's not, as of yet, it hasn't had a woman, but she's going to be installed. And then the November 5th election comes, and you then have the pretext. You then have the plausibility that, well, it makes sense. There's been so much positive. Americans were so thrilled to have a female president. 78% were proud of finally having a female president. Of course, there was a surge, and she was fortunate. The honeymoon period wasn't over yet, and I'm sure that the honeymoon period will end. But now Kamala Harris, will be continuing as president of the United States for the next 4 years, and maybe 4 years beyond that. And my advice to Americans is, a lot of Americans in 2016, when he was running against Hillary Clinton, I read an article in a mainstream publication by an op-ed writer, an opinion piece, and he related a conversation he heard on a New York City subway, where these two men were talking and saying, talking about the upcoming election between Hillary and Trump. And one asked the other, who are you going to vote for? And this op-ed writer, this editorial writer, said he heard one whisper, but he had to whisper loudly because of the train. And he said, you know what? I'm going to vote for Trump. And the other one was surprised. And I think there's a lot of that in the United States. I think there are a lot of people who support Donald Trump, but they don't want to be vocal about their support because they're afraid of being bullied and shouted down by the woke idiot mob who don't know the difference between, they think genders go on forever instead of it being what it is, binary, men and women. There are two genders. I say that all the time on this. So people are not vocal. When they support Trump, they're less inclined to be vocal about it. And part of the reason they're less inclined to be vocal about it is because you have some unfortunate people who are like, oh yeah, Donald Trump is the best. I love Donald Trump. He's going to let me keep my gun. And he loves Jesus. And so I'm going to vote for that. And that's the guy they put on TV. That's the guy who gets to be on ABC Nightly News. At the rally in Pennsylvania, we asked this voter why you like Trump so much. And the guy's wearing a red, white, blue T-shirt, and he's got his MAGA hat on, and he's missing 3 teeth. And he's, well, I love that Trump. He's just so funny. And people go, oh, I don't want to be associated with those people. I don't want to be associated with that crowd. And so they keep quiet. And then if what I am predicting comes to pass, if I'm right, then all those quiet people will go, well, look what the news is saying. I guess I'm in the minority. I guess it's like 2020 all over again when they voted for him then. but we're quiet about it. There needs to be more voices like Elon Musk just did that interview with Jordan Peterson. And yeah, he's not all in on the cult of personality of this MAGA crowd. He's not all in on that, but he really recognizes that the best course policy-wise for the United States of America is the Republican agenda, and it's to get off this woke, idiotic Marxist train that Kamala Harris and her handlers, however, Harris, to get off this disastrous course they have the United States on, which is leading them right down the WEF Great Reset agenda. I'm going to just catch up on what's being written. Anna Monarchy writes, this rendition makes more sense. Okay, I read that already. Anna Monarchy writes, there's a mental health service place in my town called the Mary McGill Center. Kamala should go there. All right. Not going to happen, but I mean, stuff can happen, but you've got to have your hands on the levers. And I don't, you don't. And Monarchy goes on to say, she did a typo, big deal. Daniel Copeman writes, something will happen pre-election, guaranteed. Yeah, something. And it may not be what I'm predicting. This is my prediction. I'm making it boldly that Kamala Harris will be the president of the United States before November 5th. My guess is sometime mid-November. I think that's 2 to 3 weeks before the November 5th vote, because they don't want to give Trump time to respond. And goodness knows what are the chances, but if anyone in the Trump campaign is watching this, pay attention and get ready. Forewarned is forearmed. They've thrown everything they could at President Trump. Oh, you didn't do your accounting right on these entries, so that you're now a felon. And meanwhile, Hunter Biden's laptop story, that the FBI suppresses that before the election to help Joe Biden get into office. And now who's investigating the assassination attempt on Trump? The FBI, the same politically compromised organization that suppressed the Hunter Biden laptop story. Daniel writes, kid was a patsy. Absolutely. This Thomas Matthew Crooks. And Monarchy brings up Lee Harvey Oswald's line that he announced to the world, I'm just a patsy. I'm just the fall guy. I'm just the guy they're pinning this on. There are lots more people involved, although the official story is that he was acting alone, if you want to believe that fiction. Hank Holliday, what, a little bit of sarcasm. What? They lie? No. We all know they lie. If Trump loses, there will be repercussions of the worst kind, civil war. Not if they can manage it well, not if they've got to maintain the illusion that it is the will of the people. And if you watch that full speech by Biden, whoever wrote it, they put, the will of the people is in there a couple or 3 times. That this is the essence of democracy. Well, what about the will of members of the, card-carrying members of the Democratic Party, registered Democrats? That your democracy, my American friends, your democracy demands that each party, that their members get to choose who the candidate is. They get to choose, not the backroom boys, not Joe Biden, for goodness sakes, who can't finish a sentence, who can't walk up a simple flight of stairs, who needs his wife helping him down just short little steps. He doesn't get to decide who the candidate is, but here we are. And they're selling Kamala Harris as the choice of the people, even though when she ran, I think it was in 2020. I don't think she ran in 2016. In 2020, she ran against Biden for the nomination and got 0, not one single delegate. And that was when it was like, who can we pick? Who can we manipulate the system to put forward that people will believe he beat Trump? And I think they picked Joe Biden because he was Obama's vice president. And love him or hate him, Obama has charisma. Obama has oratory. He's a good public speaker. He's got charm. He has charisma. He has a certain degree of class. I'll say it. And that rubbed off on, that created, that helped further this illusion that Biden could legitimately beat Trump. And that's the important factor, is it has to be believed. People have to believe. They have to believe the fiction that this was the will of the people. It worked in 2016 or in 2020. It worked in 2020. Joe Biden, more votes than any candidate for president than any other president in the history of the United States. It's the first time in the history of the United States that a man running for re-election increased his vote total and then lost. Every other president running for re-election, Reagan, George W. Bush, Clinton, every president whose vote total went up from their election to their re-election always won re-election until Donald Trump. And they say, well, it's an anomaly. No, it was rigged. Can't prove it. Can't prove it. But it does not pass the smells test. It reeks to high heaven. And they have to do the same thing again in 2024. They have to have people believing, even though they voted for Trump, that, well, I guess I was in the minority. And that's why I am suggesting, imploring my American friends, get a sign on your lawn, talk to your friends, especially if you're an Elon Musk. And I don't mean that in the sense that you're a multi-billionaire, but if you're educated and you can speak reasonably well. They want, when the media will put forward, that guy from Wheatonwater, Texas, and I think that Trump is great. I just love him. I'd vote for him. Everyone in my family voting for him. And they go, well, and this is your typical Trump supporter. Bullshit. It's not your typical. Yes, that guy is voting for Trump. Yes, he is. But so is Elon Musk. So are investment bankers. So is Wall Street. So are tons of people. So are business owners, independent business owners, entrepreneurs. So are Black Americans. I'm following so many young Black gentlemen, YouTube channels now, who are all in on Trump. And there's one young kid, he's quite funny. I like him. And he goes by, one of these days, I'll do a video where I talk about the accounts I'm following, but he goes by Rick, R-I-C-K-K. His channel has R-I-C-K-K in it. And he's got his MAGA hat on. He's got a white one with gold lettering, and he puts on a suit jacket and he goes, shirt, jacket, no tie, jacket, no tie. Hello, Patriots. Y'all got to get ready because this is going to be fun. And he laughs, and he's very entertaining, very engaging. And he's got hundreds of thousands of subscribers, but he's got a great channel. And another one, I listened to another one. I can't remember the name of it. It's a righteous something. Another one is a Marine. These are Black gentlemen who are all, and Officer Tatum. And they're all in on Trump. And so they're breaking the narrative, the Biden narrative, that if you're not voting for me, you ain't Black. That's one of the most racist things I've ever heard come out of a president's mouth. If you ain't voting for me, you ain't Black. Biden, who campaigned at one time with Senator Nunn, who was a senior ranking member of the KKK. Biden. You want a racist? Biden. was a racist. I don't think he has the mental capacity to be a racist anymore. He's just a doddering old man, and he can hide classified. He can take classified documents and stash them away wherever he wants. They won't even prosecute him because, hey, he's just a doddering old man. It would be cruel. It would be elder abuse to drag him through the court system for a felony crime. So we're going to give it a pass. It's the way it works. And Canada's no better. We're worse. I'm just going to read what the last things, and then I'm going to let you go. I've got to work in the morning. Daniel writes, divide and conquer. We got to come. People have to come together. People have to come together. And I do have some advice. I took courses in conflict resolution and how to bring people on side and how to sell your point of view. And maybe I'll do a video on that at some time. It's rather involved. I probably do it in about 15 minutes, but it's not something you can just say in a minute or two. You need 10, 15 minutes on how you can bring someone on side. And there are steps that you have to follow in order to do it. And Hank Holliday's writing, the world will be in deep, if I'm right, and we will be. Daniel says, if you don't stand for something, you'll fall for anything. Watch movie 2,000 Mules by Dinesh D'Souza. It will explain a lot about 2020 stolen election. All right. 2,000 Mules, okay. And Daniel also writes, Biden spoke at a high-ranking Klansman funeral. I know, he's a racist. In the 1970s, his daughter's school was being desegregated, or they were doing busing, and he said he didn't want his daughter going to a school that was going to turn into a jungle. Biden is a waste of, he's always been a waste of skin, but it's hard to be, now that he's such a shell of a human being, it feels, it's like tripping someone with cerebral palsy. What are you doing? The man's clearly, he's a horrible, he used to be. Now he's just a doddering old fool. And lastly, Anna Monarchy writes, the Hodge twins have an entertaining channel. Okay, I'll have to check that one out too. I'm getting too many. But something I'm finding, the reason I find I enjoy the content put out by Black Americans. And I mentioned before on this channel, this guy named Dave, who I used to play golf with, friends. He was a lawyer from Indianapolis, but while he was up in Canada, he wasn't able to practice law because he wasn't a member of the Canadian Law Society or the Ontario Law Society, Upper Canada Law Society. He wasn't able to practice law here, but he worked as a consultant. And, so university educated, obviously passed the bar, went to law school. Very smart gentleman. But what I find is the perspective of Black American. So a lot of the time, especially those who've gone on to post-secondary education, is that whereas white Americans and white Canadians to a large degree, there's a tendency where we just, okay, whatever you say, just tell me what I always say, tell me what to think, what to believe, just tell me and I'll spit it back out at you. I find Black Americans in particular are somewhat, I think it's part of the culture of growing up Black in America, that you're used to being lied to, that you're used to being manipulated, and you're better. I think Black Americans are often better able to see through things than white Americans and white Canadians. I don't like to sound racist, but I don't think it's so much racial. Well, it is racial to the extent that there is a lot of racism that still exists in the United States. And would I want to be Black and living in the United States of America? No, I would not. I wouldn't want to be Black and living in Canada. Bad shit happens here too. I'm friends with a lad who, when he was playing hockey, and he was 8, 9, 10 years old. He related a story where he was playing rep hockey, really good, super athlete. He just won at an international track and field competition for senior athletes. He just won the silver medal. He got a full ride, I think, to Michigan State University in track and field. And I used to coach him I used to coach him in basketball when I was 17, 18, and he was 12, 13. And he just an amazing athlete, volleyball, basketball, track and field. He was good at everything. And he was playing hockey, and he was playing, and like any kid would do, like I did when I was wearing skates, you sometimes trip a player. You know, you get mad, and he tripped the kid, and he actually said he didn't mean to do it. It's just that as he was skating, his stick got caught, you know, probably back in the days of tube skates. But anyway, he ended up tripping the guy. And the parents started to scream the N-word. Hey, get that off the ice. And yeah, it happens. I have a neighbor like this. Talking about the NBA one day, there were 3 or 4 of us guys in the neighborhood, and we were talking. Someone brought up the NBA, and he goes, "Oh, I don't watch that N-word garbage," or something like that. And we all looked at him and went, "What? What?" And he goes, "I just don't like those people." This is a guy who used to watch Archie Bunker and All in the Family and didn't laugh. It exists. And we can't bury our head in the sand. And so, anyway, I've gone on way too long. Thank you for watching. Anyone who stumbles on my channel, always thank you for the thumbs up. No production values, you know, just a lone Canadian, 58-year-old guy expressing his opinions, who's the living embodiment of cancel culture, white, straight, male, Christian. Tick, 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 cancel, 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 throwing his voice out into the public discourse. So if you want to follow me, appreciate it. It helps build my profile. Would like to get to 1,000, but we'll see if that happens. Anyway, God bless. And I'm going to end it the way I've been ending it a lot lately. May the Lord bless and keep you. May the Lord make his face to shine upon you. And may the Lord grant you peace. Good night, all. And Daniel, watch my French one and just a bit of it. Tell me if you think my French is good, bad, or horrible. Anyway, talk to you later. Jesus is King. Amen.